choir again. Something I missed so much because of the COVID. To have people to be able to sing in public is just such a blessing. You know what? Everybody is against paranoid people. Because if a person is paranoid, others will talk behind their back. I mean, when you meet a person that is so defensive, you can't help but wonder what they're hiding. If one is always ready to fight, all people will look like challengers. The human experience is very vulnerable. There's so much in our lives that we can't control. And so some of us like to build these defenses around ourselves in the attempt to convince ourselves and others that everything will be all right. And sometimes some of us build those walls too thick. And they're very brittle. And the slightest perception of a slight brings up all the defenses. And the worst thing to say to a defensive person is, don't be so defensive. If someone said that to me, I'd think, of course I get defensive when you're attacking me. Sometimes we stumble into someone's defensive zone. My father warned me, if you get stopped by the police, be polite. They may have just scraped somebody off the road. They may not be in the mood for your sense of humor. My dad knew how I was. Some people will let us walk all over them. They're defenseless, and then they may harbor resentments. Other people are so touchy that we feel we need to walk on eggshells around them. As we walk through life, we should be careful not to stomp on people. But at the same time, we should not let anyone make us walk on tiptoe. If someone is making you walk on eggshells, then they are manipulating you. They are trying to make you feel bad in order to get what they want. They may not be doing it intentionally, but they are trying to make you feel bad in order to get what they want. They will deny it if you say they are manipulative, but they are trying to make you feel bad in order to get what they want. They will say they're only seeking what's best for you, but they are trying to make you feel bad in order to get what they want. They will say, if you really loved me. They're trying to make you feel bad in order to get what they want. They'll say, after all I have done for you. They are trying to make you feel bad in order to get what they want. They will fail if we refuse to let anyone make us feel bad. I realize that we are responsible for our own feelings. If we make a mistake, we should admit it. If we face our own faults, then no one can make us feel bad. And if we are being attacked unjustly, we should be confident in our integrity. And even if they shout that we are evil, even if the situation is ambiguous, we have a right not to be yelled at, hit, or manipulated by another's tears or ranting. I mean, there are times when, in any relationship, when we try to convince the other person of our position. That's okay. But we need to distinguish persuasion from manipulation. In her book, Emotional Blackmail, Susan Forward makes 6-point diagnosis of emotional blackmail. 1, a demand by the first person. 2, resistance by the second person. So far, so good. That happens all the time. This is where the manipulation begins. 3, pressure, trying to change their mind rather than understand. 4, threats, emotional, physical, or economic. 5, the second person gives in, compliance, and the first acts like nothing ever happened. 6 is repetition. It's going to happen again. That is the lesson of appeasement. You let someone get away with something, next time they'll try to get away with something more. In a relationship, sometimes a couple takes turns being manipulators, and nations take turns being manipulators. All of us in our lives have been the manipulator and the manipulated. Let's go step by step through Dr. Forward's diagnosis to see how we might break the cycle. 1, the demand. If we want something, we should ask or simply state our desire without pressure. Compare how these sentences sound. Take me out to dinner tonight. I want to go out to eat. Take me out to dinner tonight. Even though I used a harsh tone on each one, and take me out to dinner tonight is a demand and begs for a yes and no answer. The second, I want to go out to eat tonight, is merely a statement of desire, a conversation starter. It does not force a person into a yes or no answer. If you are the receiver in this conversation, you can also prevent it from being a manipulative situation. First, don't hear a demand, even when one is made. You say, they say, take me out to eat. I say, oh, are you tired? And you don't have to, you can diffuse the situation. Get to the emotion behind the statement rather than the statement itself. And secondly, do not hear a demand where there is none. If a person says, I'd like to go out to eat tonight, do not react as if it's demand. What are you trying to do? Bankrupt us? Why are you never satisfied with what we have at home? Are you too lazy to cook? You know I had other plans for tonight. Why are you always trying to sabotage me? That second person presumed evil intent behind the person's statement. Bankruptcy, laziness, sabotage. Now, there may have been a history that leads a person to make these conclusions, and these conclusions might be accurate. But it's always best to stay in the moment and take things at face value. What was so attractive about that old fight that you want to return to it? Do not pretend that you know what another person's motivation is. Even your best guess is still a guess. And don't demand others to be mind readers. I think the most harmful conversation in any relationship is something wrong? Well, if you don't know, that's the entire problem. And people are often trapped by using words like always and never. I mean, they're seldom accurate in describing any situation, and they will close off any opportunity for change. Even if someone has always acted a certain way up to that point, they may behave differently in a new situation. Step 2, resistance. If you have to say no, say firmly and politely, no, thank you. Avoid ambiguity. Do not say yes when you really mean no. Do not counter-manipulate by agreeing, but then complaining the whole evening as you're out at dinner. If you receive a no, you have the option to accept it. Why would you force someone to do something against their will? You might still go out to eat alone, or you might call another friend. Do not expect any one person to solve all your needs at any given moment. Or you might ask the person if they have any other ideas about what we might do for dinner. This leads to step 3, pressure. Now, pressure in and of itself is not manipulation or emotional blackmail, as long as the questions are trying to clarify why a person cannot do anything. And if you are willing to clarify your position as well. Sometimes the conversation can be difficult, but it's worth it, especially if we are open-ended about the outcome. But if we are defensive, we never feel safe enough to enter into an honest conversation about our motivations and aspirations. Instead, we hold our cards tightly to our chests and hope to bluff and win. 4, threats. They short-circuit the process. This is where manipulation really starts. This is where daddy threatens to write you out of the will, or the customer will threaten to have you fired, or your spouse threatens to never let you see your children again. Jay Carter, in his book, Nasty People. And when I saw that title, I said, I have to read this book. Jay Carter, in his book, Nasty People, calls this tactic invalidation. A person invalidates you in order to get you on the defensive. The moment you start to defend yourself, you play into their game. A woman who was taking one of Jay Carter's classes was threatened by her husband, who said she would have to choose between the classes and their marriage. He set up a situation where if she left the house, she would be the ones destroying the marriage. She would be the bad guy. She refused to be put in that position. She said, I am going to the class, and you will have to choose whether or not you stay in this marriage. What she did was risky. She called his bluff and made him responsible for his own feelings. She did not want to leave the marriage. He did, and he was just trying to make her feel responsible for his feelings. This technique is called projection. And sometimes a person is afraid to admit their own feelings and thus accuse someone of feeling that for them. I mean, have you ever had someone say to you, I don't think you like me? And the question gets you to wondering, do I actually like this person? Even if you've never doubted it before. And then if you try to reassure that person that you like them, then they say, oh, you're just saying that. At which point you're probably not beginning to like them. You're beginning not to like them. This is a place where we can catch ourselves and prevent ourselves from being defensive. If we think someone else doesn't like us, we should ask, do we like them? And this is the problem that I've had, and I think all ministers have to some extent, because We prefer to think that we are benevolent saints ever able to love everybody in the world. But some people really annoy us. And we have to let go of our sainthood, and so we can start addressing real issues. But don't focus on the person, focus on behaviors. What are the behaviors of the other person that you dislike? If we can identify behavior, then we can have a chance to make a difference, something that we can change. If you just start off with the axiom that the other person is evil, there's really no place to go from there. Other techniques that people will use to invalidate are generalizations. Instead of focusing on your behavior, they make conclusions about your personality. Jay Carter gives the following example. You come home from work and your spouse greets you with, "You are inconsiderate." Translation, you forgot to bring home the milk. Or, "You are irresponsible." Also meaning, you forgot to bring home the milk. Instead of addressing the problem of no milk in the house, the issue now has become your character. Some people are sneakier and give you unwanted advice. I don't mean to upset you, but I don't want to interrupt, but it is more honest to say, I think I disagree with you on certain issues. Attempts to sugarcoat any disagreement just often fail. And we can understand why they got mad when we were only trying to help. And they might not actually hear the complaint. I mean, I hear that you can eat chocolate-covered ants, and you don't even realize that there was an ant and there was just a little crunch. And sometimes when we are complaining to somebody, we sugarcoat it so much, they say, well, gee, they love me. And we go, why aren't they listening to me? It's probably because we're not communicating, because we try to hide the fact that we disagree with them in so much chocolate that they don't realize that we're giving them a bug. Also, be careful about who you are dependent upon for your self-esteem. Because then it isn't self-esteem if it's dependent on someone else. Compliments are nice, but if you rely on them, the person has the power to manipulate you by withholding them. Susan Forward, in her book, Emotional Blackmail, describes the tools of the manipulator as fog. F-O-G. F for fear, O for obligation, and G for guilt. Fear plays on your insecurities, and a way to combat it is to be more secure about who you are. Obligation is when they say, after all I've done for you. To combat this, say, oh, I did not realize there were strings attached to your gift. Part of giving, real giving, is letting go. If we cannot give freely, then we should not pretend that it's a gift. Giving out of obligation or in hopes of receiving something sets the stage for manipulation. Guilt is when people try to convince us that we have done something bad, or if we have done something bad, use that against us. If you have done something wrong, it's best to admit it and look towards doing better in the future. Now, some people will just not accept that, and instead of focusing on the behavior, they want you to think that you, to your core, are bad. And that's where I think there's an important difference between guilt and shame. I believe guilt is good. We all need to recognize when we've done stuff. And that can help us fix stuff. But shame is bad. Because if we do something, make a mistake, and then go into a place of shame, then you become powerless and you say, I'm a weak person who could never do good again. So guilt is good, shame bad. Sometimes we hurt people accidentally. And just because we didn't intend it doesn't mean it did not hurt. I can envision two children spinning around in a room with their arms outstretched. Suddenly, one hits the other in the mouth. And one child yells, "He hit me." And the other yells, "But it was an accident." The child that is hurt is trying to put the blame on the other, all the blame. And the child that is claiming that it was an accident is denying that it was a predictable consequences. Both kids are guilty of spinning uncontrollably, but neither will take responsibility for the collision. And I don't know, this probably was like one of my go-to parenting phrases with my son. No, that wasn't an accident. That was a consequence. What were you doing right before the accident happened? But our lives are like those two spinning children in the room. We spin through our relationships unaware of the many near misses we have. And when we do bump into someone, we get mad at them for being in our way. And they get mad at us for hitting them. It is a comfortable delusion to believe that we are always right. But if we try to defend that illusion, we are ripe for manipulation. Someone who knows our secrets can use them in exchange for keeping them. Or if we cannot admit a mistake, then it becomes necessary to find others to blame. But the truth is, we're all human, doing the best we can, putting the best spin on our own behavior and the worst on others. Or sometimes we do the opposite and imagine that others are perfect and we need to hide our faults. The truth is that we all are a bit wobbly. Sometimes we spin and sometimes we topple, but by forgiving ourselves and others, we have the ability to start again. There's a book called The Four Agreements, written by Don Miguel Ruiz. And he offers this pathway for us. The four agreements are: 1, be impeccable with your word. 2, don't take anything personally. 3, don't make assumptions. And 4, always do your best. Be impeccable with your word. Speak with integrity. Say only what you mean. Avoid using the words to speak against yourself or to gossip about others. Use the power of your words in the direction of truth and love. 2, don't take anything personally. Nothing others do is because of you. What others do and say is a projection of their own reality, their own dreams. And when you are immune to the actions of others, you won't be the victim of needless suffering. And this one's hard because we always like to think that we're the center of the universe and that people are mad at us for something exactly we did. But you don't know what that person's life has been like up to that point. You might have been the event that triggered this response, but the whole totality of the response probably has more to do with them than it does with you. Own your part of it. but don't own all of it. The 3, don't make assumptions. Find the courage to ask the questions, to express what you really want. Communicate with others as clearly as you can to avoid misunderstanding, sadness, and drama. With this one agreement, you can completely transform your life. Pause before stepping into the breach to get into a fight to say, what's happening here? And even that just gives a little space for a better outcome. And always do your best. This one was always hard for me because that was what my dad always told me. And so this got twisted in my mind, is that like I'd get an A on a paper, but no, that I really didn't do my best. So I said, oh gosh, I really fooled the teachers. I'm not really this smart. Or the other time, if I did my best, but it didn't have the result, I say, was it really my best? Was it really my best? Because if it was really my best, I would have had a better result. But we have to remember that our best is going to change from moment to moment. It will be different when you are healthy as opposed to you when you are sick. Under any circumstance, simply do your best and you will avoid self-judgment and self-abuse and regret. If you are feeling only 70% today, 70% is your best. And if you can do what football coaches have been demanding and give 110%, well, that's no longer 110%. You just have a new level of your 100%. Ruiz's 4 agreements are just a variation on the principle of respecting the worth and dignity of all people, yourself and others, which is a variation of the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. When we are defensive, we twist the golden rule until it becomes do unto others before they do unto you. When people are being nasty, they are probably following the second rule, making a preemptive defensive strike. If we understand that people often are making a preemptive defensive strike, it can insulate us from being put on the defensive and give us the power to act with integrity and grace. I often think when you see 2 dogs on the street being aggressive towards each other, if they're about the same size, they will square off and they will, really get ready to fight. But I remember as a kid, we had a pretty big dog, and our neighbor had a small little yappy step-on dog. And that dog would just be following our dog, just yapping at her heels all day. And our dog just didn't care. Said, yep, that's what that dog does. and I'm sure we all encounter people in our lives where we say, yeah, that's just what that person does. And part of the way to defend against that is to realize your biggest dog. that are they really going to be able to harm you to your core? Not if your core is strong enough. So whenever I feel like I'm unduly being attacked, I try to imagine myself as my pet dog Princess, who just was big enough to ignore the barking dog. we can avoid the fifth step of emotional blackmail, which is caving in. I mean, we might change our mind because the other person might have a point. But that only works if we can cut through the manipulation and get to the real issues. And the sixth step of emotional blackmail is repetition. People continue to be defensive and use manipulation because it works, at least in the short run. But in the long run, life becomes a series of battles to win, and thus we lose the war. If we refuse to play the manipulator's game, we will experience conflict in the short run, but manipulations are likely to stop when a person discovers they no longer work. Oftentimes, a minister, after the service, someone says, "I thought you were talking to me." And as I'm about to exit ministry after 4 sermons after this, I'm going to give you one of the tricks of the trade. It's the gaze. You gaze across the room, and you almost look like you're looking at everybody, but you're really looking at the top of their head. And unless you're talking about hairstyles, you're probably not pointing out anybody in particular. But if it is true, someone will feel that and say, "Oh my goodness, looked right at me when he said that one." So if you think that I've been talking about you in this sermon, talking about you, you are right. But I've also been talking about me. We have all learned the tactics of defensiveness and manipulation. But may this fellowship be a place where we get together and experiment with a better way. May we bless and be blessed.